society.
Welcome. Welcome to this last plenary of this first day of the Research and Innovation Days, a special plenary on European universities, where we want to explore with you and of course with our panelists how to connect the European education area with the European research area. Universities are obvious key protagonists of that effort to connect across policy areas. And I have the great pleasure of moderating this session with Themis Christophidou, my friend and fellow Director General of DG Education and Culture. And we will moderate the session in 2 rounds and a bit more. Themis will tell you all about it. Themis, over to you.
Welcome to everybody. I would like to join Jean-Éric Paquet in welcoming you here today. It's a great pleasure, dear distinguished speakers. Higher education institutions across Europe are adapting to changing societal circumstances linked to climate, technology, demography, and the COVID-19 pandemic. At European level, we want to do all that we can in our power to support all higher education institutions to address these challenges. We are therefore working on a European strategy for universities. Today's panel will serve as a targeted consultation. In developing this strategy, my team has worked closely together with the colleagues of DG Director General for Research and Innovation, and with your valuable input, we hope to deliver a truly transformative European strategy for universities. Today, we will focus our discussion on 2 areas that encompass the broad spectrum of education, research, and innovation. These are how to support the higher education sector in preparing for digital transition, and how to strengthen both its international dimension and global competitiveness. Without further ado, I have now the honor to give the floor to Vice President Margaritis Chinas, who will share his views with you on the upcoming European strategy for universities.
Thank you, Themis, Madame la Ministre, Maria, distinguished guests, and many friends who watch from home or elsewhere. I'm delighted to be part of this panel and kickstart the discussion today on the European strategy for universities. Since Renaissance, European universities have always been a hub for excellence, for progress, for inclusion, for enlightenment. And this spark that European universities have always given to our continent is something that in our union today we treasure a lot. And we want, together with the Commissioner and our member states and our colleagues at the European Parliament, we want to create a new dynamic, a new ecosystem, a new process where we could regain some of this spark and creativity that have always shaped our academic communities at the university level. This session today is also about you. We are very much interested in listening to you, in harvesting your views. We are now in full preparation of our future strategy, and no strategy is worthy of its name unless it encompasses a broad spectrum of contribution coming from different sources and from different sensitivities. But let me say from the start that the process that will take us towards the European strategy for universities is not a process that will happen in a political vacuum. It is not a process that will develop in a laboratory. We do not want to work under conditions of a sterilized environment. This strategy will be part and parcel of the wider dynamic political picture which is emerging in the European Union under this Commission. There are many vibrant work streams. Chantier, I think, in French is a better word to describe them, that would definitely influence our strategy and will fertilize our thinking. And these strategies, these chantiers, these work streams are not property of individual constituencies. They do not belong to certain elites. They do not concern deep and narrow kingdoms, be it scientific, political, or pressure groups. These are happening for the European citizens and will shape definitely our society and what we stand for in today's world. Let me take you through this chantier, starting, of course, from the Green Deal. The Green Deal is not a technical exercise that has to do with certain emission targets and our stated ambition to become the first decarbonized continent in the world by 2050. It's not about that, or rather, it's not only about that. It's about a fundamental change in society and the economy. It's how we will structure our financial services, what type of economic activities we'll be financing with what type of instruments. It's about attitudes, it's about perception, it's about values, it's about living in a different world. Equally for the digital transition. The digital transition that we had set in motion is a transition that aims at providing European answers to questions that have been answered differently in the United States and have not been answered at all in other parts of the world. We are shaping an anthropocentric European way of digital transition that would have a clear people's element in shaping key decisions that will not leave to software engineers and to algorithm experts decisions that pertain to the way we think, buy, interact, or vote. Equally, our stated ambition for a global Europe, that's another chantier where we will be putting a lot of resources together with political objectives to project a Europe which can be at the time an actor of solidarity, but also an actor of peace, an actor of enforcing international standards, an actor that contributes to global governance. The same applies to chantier like our skills agenda and the industrial strategy, where we need to recapture our competitive edge, where we need to bridge the skills gap that has affected big swathes of our populations, where we need to help bring this skills revolution that we need, not only for the young Europeans, but also for the ones who need to upskill and reskill and join the new challenges in the labor market. Same thing with the industrial strategy, where we need to give our industry and enterprises a certain feel that they can benefit from opportunities of scale, but at the same time also contribute to the strategic autonomy that we so desperately need in Europe. And finally, I would not be worthy of my responsibilities in the Commission if I didn't mention our European superpower, the fantastic appeal of our soft power. Europe is the world's epicenter of democracy, human rights, privacy, protecting minorities, of universal systems for health and education. We are at the center of what many believe an epicenter of good and fair government. And these are superpowers that we have at our disposal of equal, if not superior, might than the resources that we will be developing for universities. Of course, I would not like to avoid the discussion on money and resources. Nothing moves without money and resources, and we're very lucky in this current juncture to benefit from unprecedented financial possibilities. We are also very lucky to put forward these proposals at the beginning of the new budgetary cycle, which is always a good thing to have at the European level. We will have, from the Horizon budget, around 95 billion euros for the next 7 years, and from the education through Erasmus Plus, 26 billion. Never before the European Union could benefit from such a considerable amount of resources for research and education. I repeat, never again. And this is, of course, an opportunity, but it's also a responsibility to get it right. And intentionally, I do not mention that on top of this money, we can also count on the unprecedented resources from the next generation EU recovery and resilience plans that are now being unfolded across Europe. And I'm very proud and happy to see that in practically all national recovery and resilience funds, the research and education component is very present. I would say it's central, which is also an excellent thing to have as we're coming now closer to our university strategy. To conclude, this university strategy will not start from scratch. We are already have been working for some time on the fundamental components of this European education area, which is built around alliances, mobility. We want these university alliances that are already underway not simply to be a network of like-minded academics. We want them to be the embryonic stage of something that one day will become a European curriculum of knowledge, a common body of communality in education, and of course, with a logical consequence of a common degree. This is what we need in Europe, and this is where we're doing less well when we're compared to our US counterparts. They have a federal system, they have an aligned system, they can put together everything that comes from private endowment, state funding, research, and produce applied results that make a change in society, in economy, in the market. We're not yet there. We have an ecosystem, we have a constellation of basically national education systems that we're now trying to help converge. But we will never reach the competitive edge we're looking for unless this convergence actually leads to a communality of educational outputs. So we're starting now this work. This is a critical stage of our consultation process. More consultations will happen for the rest of the year. And I want to assure you of our commitment. We have discussed this with Commissioner Gabriel repeatedly. We are determined to get this right. This is a political opportunity that we will not afford to miss, and never before all the parameters for getting it right had not been clearer as they are now. Thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to listening from you now.
Thank you, Vice President, for setting the scene. It is my pleasure and great honor to welcome my Commissioner, Commissioner Maria Gabriel, responsible for innovation, research, culture, education, and youth. Also a pleasure to welcome Madame Frédérique Vidal, Minister for Higher Education, Research, and Innovation of France. Professor Karen Max, Rector Magnificus University of Amsterdam and Chair of the League of European Research Universities, and Michael Murphy, President of the European University Association, former President, University College Cork. Jean-Eric, back to you.
Thank you. So what we will now do is 2 rounds of discussion with the panel, moderated by Themis and myself. It is 4 of you in the panel, I'm sure we will have the benefit from large insights. We would, of course, be grateful for concise and snappy replies. Professor Max is for now not online, so it is 3 of you. And the first round is going to be moderated by Themis, and I will then come back for the global dimension of universities.
Okay. So as the Vice President said, supporting the higher education sector in managing the digital transition will be a key priority of the European Strategy for Universities, building on the Digital Education Action Plan. We are already seeing this in our targeted consultations. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated change in this area, but also shown room for improvement. I want now to pass the floor to Commissioner Gabriel. Commissioner Gabriel, how can the EU empower universities in the digital decade?
Well, thank you very much, Demise, Madame le Ministre, dear Professor Murphy, dear Marguerite, Jean-Eric. Well, first of all, I think that we have all the necessary prerequisites to empower our universities for the next digital decade. And I must say that for us, universities are key if you'd like not only to achieve and to succeed in the European education area, but if you'd like to build effective, operational and adequate synergies between the European research area and the European education area. Allow me to start with 2 observations. What we have seen during the crisis is that from one side, the higher education institutions showed a higher level of preparedness in comparison with schools and vocational education. So that means that we need really to build on their experience. The second is that when we look at the different member states, we nevertheless need to say that the different higher education institutions have different levels of digital capacity. So that's why we need to address these challenges. And first, I think that how we'll empower our universities is by clearly saying that we are here in order to support you. And that's why our first idea is to help our universities to have digital transformation plans, digital pedagogy and expertise, including on emerging technology such as artificial intelligence. Again, here we can use the experience of our European Universities Alliances, because already 60% of them started to share data, to share materials, and 80% of them said that if that process was started before the pandemic, they will be better prepared. The second, it's not only about digital transformation plans, it's not only about digital materials, it's about high quality content. So that's why for me, the second question is that we need to place greater emphasis on developing and sharing high quality digital education content, tools and platforms. Third, it's a topic that is very close to my heart. We all talk about the role of our universities for more inclusiveness, so that's why my plea is let's pay attention to our girls and to our women. Let's have more girls and women in STEM education. Let's adapt our curricula in order to provide them better possibilities. Fourth element for me, open science. We all have seen during the crisis how important it is to exchange data. And that's why I'm very glad that we have the European Open Science Cloud. It's up to us, really, together with universities too, to transform this into a European framework where we can share data, where we can create services, and where we can give access to those services. And finally, yes, let's talk about the importance of Horizon Europe program too, because we have Erasmus+, but we have Horizon Europe. That means, again, that the crucial question, if you'd like to succeed in this digital decade, we need, again, to closely link research, innovation, and education. And here, with our European strategy for universities, with the good experience of the European University Alliances, I think that we have a very strong base. So that was only some first elements, but my main message here is we can do it. We have strengths, but it's up to us to transform these measures, these tools, these instruments into something coherent, into something that will help us, together with our universities, to affirm our European leadership in this knowledge field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Minister Vidal, how can or should member states do to accelerate the digital transition of the higher education sector, both in education and research dimension? And how can the collaboration between member states be strengthened? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear Maria, first of all, I really would like to thank you for, dear colleagues, thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this special plenary session on the future of higher education in Europe, which addresses the key issue of digital transformation. Our higher education systems have adapted tremendously during the pandemic in order to continue their missions and developing in an unprecedented way new tools, new practices, new modes of organization based on digital means. I would like to highlight three aspects of our strategy. First, the crisis has demonstrated the need to strengthen the digital skills of students, but also of all academic staffs. We know for several years that training of citizens of tomorrow requires the development of digital skills, but this is a social, societal, and also a democratic issue. So some countries have developed tools for assessing and certifying digital skills based on the European reference framework. This is the case in France with the PIX platform. And I think that it could be useful to develop links between all these national tools with a view, for example, to moving towards standardized certifications in Europe for digital proficiency. Secondly, the pandemic has also highlighted the preponderance of platforms operated by non-European companies and our relative dependence of these players for sovereign activities such as research or education. But this is not only a competitiveness issue, but also a sovereignty issue, since the use of digital solutions outside the EU often implies the capture of data and raises not only the question of personal data protection, but also our capability to protect our economic interests. Working to restore a balance can only be done together at the European level by supporting, for example, our EdTech champions in order to strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy. Finally, the use of distance learning reminds us that digital technologies are a lever for facilitating access to higher education, regardless of geographical origins. So digital solutions coupled with local support and the involvement of regions and cities could be considered at the European level. In France, since 2019, we have developed with local authorities what we call connected campuses, where learners can follow a distance learning course while being accompanied by a tutor. These connected campuses give access to training to learners located in remote areas and thus make it possible not to leave any young person on the side of the road, especially those who are far from the big cities and the big university centers. So this initiative could serve as an inspiration and be developed at the European level, and of course, the European Universities Alliances could be real opportunities in that purpose, and could also be a vector for the internationalization of our higher education offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Professor Murphy, what are your suggested solutions to realize your vision on the open and digital university of the future? And what do you think is needed from the EU level and from the member states level?
Thank you, Themis. I think the first thing to say is that our approach has to be a holistic and integrated one. We've learned this from the pandemic, and we have set this out in our EUA document on universities without walls, which is our vision for 2030. Digitalization has implications across the institution, from governance to management, use of space, physical and data infrastructure. It has implications for pedagogics, new roles and experiences for students and teachers, and of course, a refashioned mobility. So we have to take a very complex, integrated approach. We made a lot of progress in teaching and learning over the past decade. We saw that in our EUA survey last year, but of course the pandemic has boosted implementation. But we must also remember that digitalization provides us with tools. We will still have to focus on quality, on satisfying the student experience. And of course, as the Minister just said, it does allow us to be more inclusive, more committed to green transformation and to societal outreach. So it is an enabler. 3 concrete suggestions briefly. The first, as Vice President Shinas alluded to, is that you can't do this without investment. And digitalization is not a cost-saving initiative. Building campuses in a holistic way requires new infrastructure, more specialized staff, technical staff, and the training of academics. So the recovery plans, I'm glad to hear, will be investing. EU, secondly, can continue to support collaboration and exchange so that we share good practices. And thirdly, very importantly, the regulatory framework must be appropriate and must be supportive and not acting contrary to what we're trying to achieve. And I might just signal an example that's currently active, and that's the Digital Services Act. It's a good example of regulation causing an unanticipated challenge. Yes, it addresses data management and copyright in the private sector space, but it also captures universities and research institutions and libraries, which will be hampered if it is applied as it is in meeting our public interest agenda. So we're seeking derogation, as you would expect. So in summary, yes, investment, yes, support of regulatory frameworks, but in a holistic, integrated fashion. These are key to success, I think.
Thank you, Michael. Professor Max, could you briefly outline what is your vision for the role of digital in higher education institutions over the next decade, and what support you think is needed from the EU and from the member state level?
Thank you so much, and happy to be here. It's important that in this time of change that we do whatever is possible to bring the universities in the position that they need to be to do their work. The collaborative work that we have been doing by our scholars worldwide is a proven mechanism for inspiration, and it can empower the European values, freedom of speech, tolerance, and the academic values. And how do we strengthen that? How can we achieve that in Europe? First of all, I think what is important is that we have to remove borders between countries, remove borders in the circulation of knowledge as we are. And there has been already a lot of important work by the European Commission, but now still the landscape is a kind of splintered. We have the ERA, we have the EEA, we have the EIA, and there is no binding strength coming out of these areas. So I do believe that we have to bring Europe really together and make we would need what some call a European Knowledge Act, so that we have a legal framework to binding to share our knowledge. It's very important. That has been the goal already for some years as a point of view of the universities, but now there is even more. We are now, because actually so far we have not looked too much into the digitization, and there are some uncomfortable questions that come with that. The independency of knowledge is actually at stake for various reasons. One of the reasons is that we use big platforms from big companies, and in a sense that in itself should not be the problem, were it not that these platforms are not interoperable and they make you choose for one family of products, which means that you create actually different bubbles, a bubble per platform of universities, and that limits the interaction that we want to have. This is one problem. Another problem is that digital processes are much more intrusive than just the storing of data on paper, so to speak, to make two extremes. So this brings us or hits us actually in the heart of what we are doing. And that means that we do not have full ownership any longer in the ways we do research, in the ways we also educate. So, and this is something that we really cannot, we cannot accept. And that's why we need, besides the knowledge agreement, we also need what we call the Digital University Act. Doesn't matter how you want to call for it, but it is important to do this now. This will take additional investments from all our researchers, all our educators. So we also have to make sure that we find the funding together to stimulate them to do and to continue, actually, why making this change, to continue their own research and education. Because at this this point in time, we definitely cannot allow a setback of our position in research and education. And then a last point I want to make, which is very important also for the future, is the trust in science. We should take the opportunity so that we can reach out with our university communities and the communities around us in the cities and in actually also among Europe. With more inclusion and more dialogue with our communities, there's a lot of good science we can do together, and it would also help in the understanding of the science mechanism and improve the trust in science. And by the way, in a European context, this would also help to have interesting interactions among citizens, among the whole of Europe, in a scientific and education context. So we are hopeful that in the next decade we can get the means and the infrastructure for this transition, and transition that in my view is much stronger than what we had in the bachelor master, the Bologna process, or of universities. This is really being or hitting all, or influencing all our activities at the university, and in a more intrinsic way. So I hope we can do something together for better research, better education, and a stronger Europe.
Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to thank all our panelists for their rich and precious contributions. This will be invaluable to us in developing this aspect of the European strategy for universities. Building on the Commission's Digital Education Action Plan, our responses will focus on both building system capacity and fostering individual competences of students and staff. I look forward to continuing this process. As the clock is recklessly ticking, we have to move on to our second topic. Back to you, Jean-Éric.
Thank you very much, Tamis. Recklessly ticking, that's a nice formula. We now move indeed to the second dimension, which is the global dimension of universities. European universities are a magnet for talent. You are attracting students from all over the world, and you are part of research taking place all over the world. We will start this second part of the panel with you, Michael, with a short initial introduction. So how do we ensure the competitiveness of European universities, and how do you ensure your impact on that global research and education agenda? Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Jean-Éric. 3 points, and I'm glad you've made my first point, because we must remember that Europe's universities are already strong global players. Perhaps not the strongest, but certainly relatively strong, because we collaborate right across the globe in all aspects of our missions. And I want to welcome, in particular, the Commission's global approach to R&I. You've underlined this principle of being open to the world as a default. And can I, in practical terms, recommend that we conclude association agreements as quickly as possible, so that Europe's universities and global partners have planning security for collaboration in the coming years. So we're already strong, and we're taking the right track policy-wise. Second point, we must, of course, be strong internally in Europe to impact the global scene. So the research area, the higher education area, the innovation areas, they give us a good policy framework. But again, I have to say, we have to invest the money in order to ensure that these are a success. And alignment between EU and national policies, funding programs in particular, absolutely critical to Europe's strengths. We must continue to reform national research and higher education systems to different degrees in different places, because we have to have the framework conditions for pan-continental networking. That means, and this has been mentioned already, the removal of barriers to transnational cooperation so that we can work more effectively together as European universities to then compete on the global stage. Third point is the preservation of diversity in our system is important. And yes, harmonizing practices to the extent needed for effective and efficient networking. So a healthy balance is required. On the one hand, between concentrations of resources in institutions of scale, where the disciplinary mixes must have a scale to be globally competitive, but on the other hand, ensuring that excellence continues to be distributed equitably among all the regions of Europe. Because a highly functioning, harmonious European society will be enabled by this approach. And that itself will give us competitiveness. My last point is that, yes, international and intercontinental cooperation must grow further, and it must take values into account. Vice President mentioned this earlier. The global challenges today are stateless, they respect no borders. So we need the totality of global capacity and competence in research and education, which in turn is based on collaboration through trust and through reciprocity. These partnerships must be values-based. We must strengthen global values such as freedom of speech and human rights, and commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals to have the common trust and reciprocity that's necessary. So in summary, we are competitive, and we will be more so, but mainly in the sense of being strong and valued partners contributing to the solution of global challenges. I'm optimistic that we will get it right.
Michael, thank you very much. I hear a lot of alignment indeed with the global approach on research policy, and anchoring universities in that policy would be for you a large measure of the success with our diversity. And as to association agreements, Michael, thanks for the message. We on it. Maria, if I can start with you, what are your priorities to ensure that that our universities are empowered in this international context and make a difference?
Well, from my side, 3 points too, Professor Murphy. First, I think that we need to attract and retain talented students, academics, researchers in our European higher education institutions, because this is key for the knowledge creation and diffusion, as well for the skills development across the European Union. So I think that, yes, first the European Union should become an even more attractive destination and partner, both in the global race for talent, as well as in promoting strategic partnerships with international partners to provide inclusive and quality education for all. Second, I fully agree, scientific excellence needs to be reaffirmed as core to Europe's competitiveness. Universities are knowledge creators with research as a key mission too, and support here is needed to the full spectrum of academic research and innovation, from curiosity-driven research to those that are addressing societal challenges and innovation. And I think that, yes, we need to strengthen our higher education institution and their surrounding ecosystems across the EU in order to improve access to excellence for all institutions. So the third element for me is that, yes, there is a clear need for more cooperation at European level and at the global level, because only together we can address global challenges like the twin green and digital transitions. And that's why that's a very good point. Now we have the new global approach in research and innovation. What we are saying that we need to have Europe leading by example. We would like to have a rule-based multilateralism, to have reciprocity and openness. So that will be crucial now in our European strategy for universities to stay coherent with the key elements in our global approach and to give to our universities the necessary tools in order not only to show us that this coherent approach is possible, but to make them thrive in this particularly challenging context. Thank you.
Maria, thank you very much. So basing our competitiveness on our excellence, and as I think you said very convincingly, also give direction to the research which universities are doing. They are at the heart of society and are driving our transformations. Madame la Ministre, if I can turn to you, I know that member states, France in your case, are investing in the competitiveness of their universities. You are striving for that. So how are you doing it in your own national context? But I also know that you are very keen to see universities also connect globally. So that's a double agenda. So how are you doing it in France, Minister?
So thank you very much again, especially for putting the question of the international dimension of European strategy for universities on the agenda. I think it is a fact, globalization has not stopped at the front door of our universities, and according to UNESCO, today more than 4.5 million students study outside their own country, and this number is going to increase further. On the other hand, in order to remain a world leader, our researchers need to collaborate with colleagues around the world, but they are also subject to increased competition. So these evolutions are both a challenge and a chance for Europe. Member states and Commission together need to find the suitable responses to improve the global competitiveness of our university sector. And I would like to outline some key elements from my point of view. First, in line with the Commission's recently published global approach to research and innovation, we certainly should reaffirm that the European commitment to take the lead in maintaining openness in international research and innovation cooperation. However, we need also a clear level playing field and reciprocity in cooperation with partner countries, reciprocity based on shared fundamental values and principles. Strengthening collaboration between universities at a global level must mean mutual benefits for both sides. Furthermore, with a view to the European strategy for universities, I pledge for putting more emphasis on the attractiveness of the European higher education, research and innovation systems. We need to attract the best talents with ambitious and targeted scholarship programs, but also we need to have adapted services to reach foreign students in their own countries. And I make a reference here to the connected campus I mentioned earlier. However, mobility should always be balanced and go both ways. This is why we should encourage our students and researchers to gain experience worldwide for their own benefit, of course, but also in order to promote our values and principles. For that, we should take advantages of all our European assets, as for example, the outermost regions and overseas countries and territories that are our bridgeheads to the world. Finally, in a more globalized world, our strategy will gain momentum if we are able to build on our assets and promote the visibility of our world-class university system. Within the Bologna process, European countries already cope with building the European higher education area, which includes the ECTS system and quality assurance mechanisms. Here we are setting standards that are to be promoted worldwide. Eurofield is also a frontrunner when it comes in the green and digital transitions. We should make more use of this advantage and promote our models worldwide. In this regard, we should encourage the European universities' alliances to develop a stronger international dimension. Building on our own assets also means supporting developing partner countries with capacity building activities. The objective is that all partners reach a maturity to build mutually beneficial partnerships and strengthen collaboration between institutions at the global level. I will leave it here for the moment, but finally, France is committed to contribute to a reinforced competitiveness of Europe's universities. The upcoming French presidency of the Council will be an opportunity to bring forward discussions on the global dimension of higher education, research and innovation between member states and the Commission, and I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Vidal. We are very much looking forward to your leadership during your presidency on this important dimension. Thank you for underlining level playing field and reciprocity alongside Maria Gabriel. And thanks also for telling to our researchers and professors that they need to confront themselves to the diversity of scientific cultures in Europe and outside, but then come back to Europe. We want you back as well. Merci, Madame la Ministre. Professor Max, I finish with you. Could you give us your top priorities, your 2 or 3 measures which you think are key in your context, or maybe lessons also for others, to ensure the increased international dimension of the higher education sector in Europe?
Well, thank you for the question. I think I could answer this on several levels. Of course, there's going to be a lot of possibilities in a combination of digital and live exchanges, both in the education atmosphere and in the education as in the research of researchers. So I think there's a lot that can be going on there. But what is important for the academic community is that we can have trust, and share our information in a really safe way. And that is in a digital era much more difficult than it was before. And I think we as Europe have to make sure that we can enable or get really the profit of the possibilities that the digital brings, that we can use that profit, and that we can find safe ways to increase our collaboration in that. And that's not only better for the research and education, I think that's also better, as I said already in my statement, for the future of the citizens of Europe, to be more interconnected in this independent knowledge.
Thank you very much, Professor Max. Indeed, I mean, the possibilities offered by our new digital world for outreach are limitless, and doing it right is going to be absolutely key. I mean, this is where the guidelines on how higher education institutions and research organizations can engage globally, which we have discussed during these research and innovation days that we'll continue to discuss, I think will be very useful as well. Thank you so much, Michael. You want to briefly react to what you heard?
No.
Michael, do you want to briefly react to what you heard as you had the opening statement? Or shall I move over to Thomas?
No, I think I'm watching your clock closely and you're behind schedule. On you go.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks a lot. Thomas, over to you for the concluding part of the panel.
Thank you to all of you for your ideas today, which will find their way into the European strategy for universities. I would like to highlight that the Commission will be continuing targeted consultations throughout 2021, because it is important for us to ensure that the strategy addresses the needs and future aspirations of the sector. I would like now to invite the panelists for a final remark. As we have a couple of minutes left, it will have to be short, please. One sentence each on what you take away from today. Madame la Ministre Frédérique Vidal, as your incoming presidency from January, I would like to invite you to share with us your views on what you heard today first. Please, briefly.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I believe that this plenary has shown that we share an ambition for European universities, and of course, during the French presidency, we will push forward the discussion on this priority, bearing in mind three keywords: recovery, power, and belonging. And one of our flagship events will be entitled Universities for the Future of Europe, and it will serve as a forum in order to reach a common vision on how to make this transformation happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Professor Max, a couple of words from you, please.
I'm actually delighted that the European Commission is taking the role of science and education and of independent research and knowledge so serious. And I do look forward to helping and making this work in the digital age. So thank you.
I thank you. Professor Murphy, Michael, as President of the European University Association, what is your takeaway from today?
Thank you, Thomas. We know the challenges. We know the answers. We have the policy frameworks with our various areas. All we need now is to live up to the rhetoric, to invest and to implement our plans. Then success lies ahead of us.
It sounds very simple. Thank you, Michael. Commissioner Gabriel, please.
Well, from my side, working together, because for me that's the best way to create a European strategy for universities that reflects our common vision, our shared hopes for the future. Leadership and decisive actions, because all the challenges that we are facing today require this leadership and these decisive actions. Yes, Professor Murphy, we have a political framework, we have ambition, we have instruments, we have means. So now it's up to us to have a coherent approach with very concrete actions, building on the strengths of our universities, reaffirming our values, and at the same time using the opportunities that are in front of us. One sentence: together we can make a difference for the next generation of Europeans.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jean-Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we will now close, Margaritis, with a few remarks on your side. I mean, I think you heard actors which are not limited to their policy areas. They are really seeing universities in research and innovation in the much broader context. Did you find the spark which you were looking for, Margaritis? Over to you.
Yes, I was very much encouraged by the honesty and the positivity of our panelists, and also by the many online comments that I'm reading in the screen in front of me. I'm also very conscious that about in 3 minutes we will lose half of our audience because they will switch to football. So I need to be able to leave you with three. So it will be me as well. So I need to leave you with 3 final messages, 3 takeaways that I think fit in this discussion. Message number 1 is that I understand the need for trusted and reliable digital platforms that serve the universities, not the other way around. Yes. Not universities struggling to find their place in digital platforms that are deciding the parameters of their operation themselves. Message loud and clear. Message number 2. It is clear that we cannot discuss a strategy for universities taking it only from the education side. The research side is the other part in this marriage, and I mean the outlook of this panel here in Brussels clearly shows visibly that we cannot have one without the other. And Maria Gabriel is the first commissioner ever in the history of the institution that brings together under the same portfolio research and education. And this is not an accident. It is not a coincidence. It was designed to be like this. And message number 3, and that's probably part of the spark question, the spark issue that I introduced. It is vitally important that when we engage in this new path, universities do not only speak to universities, and academics do not speak to academics. And this does not become a question of like-minded people discussing their problems. If we are to recover this spark, let's do it as at the Renaissance. Open up. Bring down the walls. It's not about the academic content of what you do. It's how you liaise to society. It's how you shape the broader political debates happening around us. And this is what we are very good at in Europe. And I'm sure that we will find a way to regain this vitality and this spark. Thank you again.
Vice President Margaritis, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. This was quite an input into the work ongoing on the strategies for universities here in Europe. We will take it all up. I thank you very much, Commissioner, Minister, Professors. I wish you a nice evening. Same to all of you. Have a good game.
Well, that was an amazing day. We had 6 plenaries, 10 panels and 9 workshops and dozens of great speakers. And in fact, more than 20,000 of you tuning in across Europe and around the world, all discussing how to shape the future together. So that's day 1 of Research and Innovations Days 2021. But don't miss tomorrow, because we have got starting with the Unleashing Innovative Procurement for Health and Care. That's the workshop that starts at 8:45. And then the new ERA, the European Research Area, put in motion. The live plenary session on that starts at 9 o'clock. Still craving more? Well, don't forget, go to the exhibition area and see what we've got for you there. Also, check out those over 100 EU-funded projects that are shaping the world. And also, have a listen to our behind-the-scenes podcast, talking to the researchers and innovators from Europe that are building our future together. With that, have a great evening. I'll see you tomorrow.